Joe, I'm sure you're used to answering questions about playing Celtic right now. I wonder, is there anything different you can come up with or try that maybe surprises the opposition in a game like this?
Yeah, I think so. I think there is. There's never going to be anything major. I think when you're in the position that we're in, when we seem to do things, it seemed to be working. You know, you don't like to change too much too soon, but I'm also a big fan of keeping things fresh, not letting things become monotonous, and you know, just getting into habits and routines of doing the same thing, because I think you can always get caught out. So, as I say always, we've got players that we can bring in and changes things slightly in how we play and how we attack and how we defend. That can always change the dynamic for us slightly, but there's still bits and bobs we can do. We think there's a few weaknesses that have come about in recent weeks. So we've looked at a few things this week on the training pitch that have gone really well. So we'll see how that happens on Sunday.
How much, when you get to this sort of stage of the season, I guess the pressure starts to build a little bit because there's a lot more at stake. How much does that come into your thinking when you're preparing for this sort of game? Yeah,
I try not to let that pressure build in, because I think we try to be consistent with our messages within the players. I think if I show any signs of cracking under any pressure, the players are going to be the first ones to sniff that out. So, you know, I try not to let that seep into anything that we're doing. I think being consistent throughout the week and in our messages that we deliver throughout the players. I try to do that no matter who we play. It's sometimes difficult when, you know, you're playing the bigger games. There might be a little bit more detail that goes into those weeks and into those messages, but we try to be so consistent throughout our weeks and hold our standards really high, actually, to no matter who we play. And I think that's been important for us and been key for us this year. So yes, the pressure does build. You can see it in some of the players sometimes, but then that's down to me to recognise that and just take it off them a little bit and try and refocus on what we're trying to do and our plan of attack to come Sunday.
Excuse me, I remember speaking to you early in the season about your, you know, sort of standards, etc. you were trying to drive. How far do you think the squad's evolved since you came in?
So much. I've said previously that they took it on board and went, you know, they went sky high really quick. I thought it'd take a lot longer than what it did to embed some of these, you know, non-negotiables that I have and standards that I thought the girls would be able to reach. They've been absolutely excellent, both on and off the pitch. And we're still trying to push that. We're still trying to get better. I think that as soon as you pull your foot off that, then, you know, little mistakes can happen and you can start to get into a little bit of a lull. And I'm hoping that doesn't happen with us. We keep pushing, we keep progressing, we keep moving forward, and I think that's big for us. And it has to come from me, it has to come from my staff that push that day in, day out. And we've got a really good group that keep things fresh, keep us going, and keep pushing our standards and our way of working. And, you know, I think if we feel it comes off any slightly little bit, then we're just straight back on it, and we don't allow that to seep throughout the week. So we've been pretty good up to now at keeping that at bay and keeping moving forward.
As you evolve and get better, do you see that happening with the other teams as well, your main challenges?
Yeah, I think they have to. I think the more we challenge, the others have to keep coming, otherwise the gap gets bigger. You notice that when you push, others push, and I think it pushes this league to be better. I think it pushes other clubs to try and challenge and do something different. I think we've got to be brave in that. I've said that all along. I think we have to be brave in how we attack games and how we set up and how we move forward. We do want to be, you know, the ones that everyone wants to beat. We are right now, and along comes that with pressure, as you say, but we've got to make sure that we're still pushing with that, and we don't become predictable, and we don't become, you know, we know what they're going to do. So that's the difficulty. Sometimes when you're playing the same team so many times, you can become predictable to each other. So, as I said, I think you do have to keep things fresh. We do need to keep pushing, moving forward, and being innovative and trying new things and making sure the others come along the way, really.
It's a final word from me. I wonder how aligned you are with the men's side of things as well. You're both top of the league right now. You've obviously just had a real successful, ultimately fell last night in Europe, but I wonder how much you influence each other within the building in terms of what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think you can, even just comments in the corridor and conversations that happen in the corridor between our staff and the men's staff, you can walk past and there's a conversation about the game the night before and how things went, and little ideas that you put into place that you can see it happening, and it's just these. You can tell sometimes a way of thinking and sometimes how aligned you seem to be in your comments and your thoughts and your ideas, and it's interesting really because I had a good conversation with Felipe a few weeks back when we did the AGM meeting, and it's sometimes can be a little bit, you can see where they're trying to go with the club and the managers that they're picking to put in places, because we did have some very similar ideas in some of our training methods and the way our messaging that we give out to our players. So yeah, it's nice to see it reflecting on both sides of the men's and the women's game in the club, and especially when we're doing really well right now.
Yeah, listen, just your thoughts on this one. Obviously, if you come out of it with a win, it gives you a huge cushion. You'd be 7 points clear. You've not lost a game all season. How do you approach this one?
Yeah, it's funny really because we know how different the outcome can look going one way or the other. But we still try to focus on one game at a time. We know there's a big final to come the week after that as well. So I think it's really important that we just take Celtic for this week. We can't think too far ahead of what that might look on the outcome of the rest of the season, because as we know, we play each other so many times that 2-game swing can change things drastically. So, we've got to make sure that we're doing our work this week and put our efforts into winning the game this week and not look too far ahead and of what factors that can have coming after that game, really.
Yeah, because this is obviously the third time you'll play Celtic in what, about 8 or 9 weeks,
yeah.
Really. This is the third time you've played them under Elena Suduka, but they seemed a bit more settled, a bit more cohesive when you played them at Ibrox last month. What do you expect from Celtic, and do you think they have settled back down again?
Yeah, I do. I think you could see the change immediately when the new manager came in and took over, which I actually think unsettled them a little bit more. Although in both games I feel like we were still the better team in the outcome and in the open play. I think if we'd have took our chances, I think both scorelines would have been heavily one way. So it's something that we've got to look at and not get too caught up in scorelines, because I think the game was further away than what scorelines suggested. But we know in these old firms that's all that matters. I think one moment can change a game, and we know now with them bringing Tash Flint into the setup, she's got a real threat. She offers a different dynamic for them, which changes them slightly how they play. So we've got to make sure that we're doing our work on them, but we also got to make sure that we're trying to hurt them in areas that we feel that they're weak, and that's something that we do week in, week out, no matter our opponents. So we know they've got some areas to exploit within that group and within that setup. So that's something we've been focusing on this week, and hopefully you can see that come out on Sunday.
When you get to this point in the season, then you can see the finish line coming. You've also got a cup final 2 next Sunday. Is this when it comes down to mentality as much as anything else? I
think so, yeah. I think these are the moments that you want to see your players really take on a little bit of that pressure and try to perform under it, because we also know that there's a moment where you can either thrive under it or you can break under it. So we've got to be careful with at what tipping point we get to. And we've got to make sure we're staying within that performance bubble and not pushing too much and feeling the pressure from wherever that may come from. And 9 times out of 10, the players put the pressure on themselves. So I've got to make sure that we're being very consistent. I think the week's consistency, building up, and how we look and how we attack these games remains the same. And it's the similar messages. Some details may change within that, and how we're going to perform and set up tactically. But I think consistency in messages and being very clear and concise on what we want to do and how we're going to try to beat Celtic on Sunday still remains the same.
I watched your interview when you signed your new contract, when you said you hadn't really been up to Glasgow before you moved up to Rangers and you've enjoyed the city. But how have you found these games, and are they different from other league games? Is there an extra edge to them, do you think, as an observer who's just come into this?
Yeah, definitely. These are the games where both teams want to go at it, and they're the games that will test you tactically as well, because there's a lot of the other league games where you're playing against a similar formation and a similar setup, and you might be having to play up against a low block for 70% of the season, but these games change it and they test you tactically a little bit more. The players within them can test you as well on a different level, offering their individuality, which again you've got to be careful of and hopefully try to combat the other way. Some things you might need to tweak slightly in your normal setup. So these games do test you a little bit more tactically and mentally as well. So these are the times that we really need to make sure we're on it as staff, and we're staying in it mentally just as much as the players are.
Are these the games, and also maybe the Glasgow City games, that define the season?
I think they can be, but we've seen previously that if you don't do your work week in, week out against the teams that you should be beating, then it can let you down. So my message has always been clear. Everybody wants to play Celtic, everybody wants to play City, but if you don't do your work in your other games, then it could come and bite you in the backside, and we don't want that to happen. So we're very clear in our messaging week in, week out. It doesn't matter who we play, we want to win every single game, and we don't take any opponent lightly, because it can only just take one moment. It can take one mistake, and it can take one moment of brilliance from an opposition player. So we need to make sure that we're on it week in, week out, and I think the players know that, especially coming into this split now. You can't have a week off where we're thinking, we can take it a little bit easy this week. And even if the players do think that, they wouldn't dare show that in front of me anyway. So I think they know our standards, they know our expectations, and they know we want to go into each game giving our all, because you pull off it a slight little bit, and you can drop points so easy.